So last year, there was this multi-million-dollar pharmaceutical production line, right? And it was just completely shut down by the FDA.
Yeah, just halted overnight.
And the crazy part is, the cause wasn't like a contaminated vat or some dirty piece of lab equipment.
Right.
It wasn't even a failure in the supply chain.
Right.
The trigger for this catastrophic shutdown was literally just a single empty digital folder just sitting on a laptop in the corner of a room.
Which is wild.
I mean, imagine running this state-of-the-art facility, right? It's humming with all this modern scientific efficiency, and then all your forward momentum grinds to this agonizing halt just because of a digital housekeeping error.
It's honestly the modern manufacturer's ultimate nightmare. Getting hit with an FDA warning letter, it essentially stops time for a company.
Oh, absolutely.
It inflicts this massive damage on your brand reputation, it halts production schedules, and, it triggers these remediation efforts that routinely cost tens of millions of dollars.
Tens of millions. Wow.
Yeah. At that point, you are no longer making medicine, you are doing digital forensics.
Right. Okay. Well, let's unpack this, because our mission for this deep dive is to explore exactly how these invisible errors are taking down industry giants.
Exactly.
And we're looking at a really insightful March 2026 article by Omer Simon, the CEO of Validfor. He analyzed this glaring pattern in recent FDA warning letters. And the thing is, modern violations, they have almost nothing to do with physical dirt or improper sanitation anymore.
No, not at all.
They are entirely about digital data integrity. We're talking about like the misuse of delete buttons, shared login credentials, and audit trails that just mysteriously go blank.
Right, because we are witnessing this very messy, very expensive transition from physical compliance to digital compliance.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Historically, an FDA inspector walked in with a white coat and swabbed machinery looking for physical contaminants. But today, they are logging into your server.
That's a huge shift.
It is. And the overarching theme Smith establishes is that data integrity is not like a software feature you can just purchase and install. It is a culture.
A culture.
Yeah. It requires a fundamental shift in how every single employee views their daily interactions with a computer. So we are going to walk you through the top 4 digital pitfalls pharmaceutical companies are stumbling into right now.
And look at the underlying mechanics of how you can adapt to stay off the FDA's radar.
Exactly.
So our first major pitfall is what the article categorizes as the orphan data. And looking at the psychology of a modern lab, the root cause here makes a lot of sense.
Oh, totally.
Because the initial instinct in the digital age is simply to digitize everything, right? Put it on a hard drive and it feels secure.
Right.
But that exact instinct creates this illusion of isolation. Inspectors are walking into these highly advanced labs and finding raw data just sitting on standalone instruments.
Yeah, completely disconnected.
Exactly. A technician runs a test on a dedicated machine. The results live on that local hard drive, and they never get backed up to the network or included in the official finalized batch record.
So the data basically becomes an island. And to put the severity of this in perspective, imagine holding a crucial $1 million legal contract, right?
Okay.
Instead of keeping that contract locked in a central monitored safe, you rip it into individual paragraphs and scatter those loose pieces of paper into random desk drawers across a massive office building.
Oh, wow. That sounds like a disaster.
It is. The organization essentially loses track of its own reality.
I have to play devil's advocate here, though. Let's say I'm the lab manager, right?
Yeah.
I put a heavy encryption protocol and a really complex password on that standalone laptop in the corner.
Okay.
And only my top technician has access. Why is that standalone data inherently bad if the machine itself is totally locked down? Like, why does the FDA care that it isn't pinging the main network?
Well, what's fascinating here is the regulatory definition of secure.
Okay.
A password protects against an outside hacker, sure, but it does absolutely nothing to protect against internal manipulation.
Internal threats.
Exactly. When data exists in a silo, it operates completely outside of institutional oversight. If that standalone data isn't mapped to a central system, the organization formally doesn't even know it exists.
Right.
And if you don't know a file exists, you cannot guarantee a lab technician didn't run a crucial test, get a failing result, and simply drag that file to the trash bin before running a second passing test.
Oh, wow. So the lack of visibility is the violation itself. It basically creates a blind spot where accountability goes to die.
That blind spot breaks the entire chain of trust. So the source outlines that the only acceptable fix is completely centralizing the data through a robust validation lifecycle management system.
Okay, a VLM.
Right. But it's vital to understand the mechanics of this. It doesn't just mean buying a cloud server and, asking employees nicely to upload their files.
Won't always do it.
Exactly. A true lifecycle management system creates a mandatory digital tether. The system is configured so that a piece of lab equipment literally cannot initiate a test run until it performs a digital handshake with the central validated environment.
So that's a hard stop.
A total hard stop. Every single piece of GXP data is mapped, captured the millisecond it is generated, and locked into the central architecture. Absolutely no orphan files can even be created, let alone left behind.
So it forces compliance at the hardware level? The machine simply refuses to work off the grid.
Exactly.
But, locking the data in a central server really only solves half the problem. You've secured the vault, but you still have people walking in and out with the keys.
Right.
Which brings us to the second pitfall, the problem of the invisible hand. Let's assume the company has centralized everything perfectly. What happens when an authorized operator quietly edits the data inside that central safe?
This is where we see some of the most shocking FDA citations in Simmons' research. Inspectors frequently uncover systems where operators have gone in and intentionally disabled the tracking mechanisms.
Oh, right.
Yes. The article cites this classic, terrifyingly common justification given to inspectors. They say, oh, the audit trail was turned off during the testing phase.
That is wild. The idea that pharmaceutical software even has an off switch for its audit trail is just crazy to me. So operators are modifying test results without leaving a single trace behind. It's like building a high-security bank, pointing cameras at every single teller station, but installing a convenient pause button under the desk for the tellers to use whenever they feel like counting money off the books.
It sounds absurd when you put it that way, but the psychology behind it is usually entirely benign.
Really? How so?
Well, a technician thinks, I'm just calibrating the machine. This isn't an official production run yet, so I don't need the system logging my every keystroke and cluttering up the database.
Okay. I can see that.
But regulators view this entirely differently. They expect a permanent, unbroken record of the who, what, when, and why of absolutely every action.
No exceptions.
No exceptions. If a user has the technical ability to alter a parameter without the system permanently logging it, the entire digital setup is deemed fundamentally non-compliant. The system's very capacity for manipulation is the failure.
Which means the obvious first step is implementing always-on audit trails. You buy modern software where that pause button simply doesn't exist. You cannot turn the tracking off, even if you want to.
Right, but if we connect this to the bigger picture, just having that trail recording in the background is completely insufficient.
Wait, really? Why?
Because the security camera is useless if the tapes just sit in a basement gathering dust. The critical mechanism companies are missing is what the industry calls periodic review management.
So having the data versus actually looking at the data.
Yes, exactly. Companies constantly check the box of having an audit trail, but the logs are ignored until the FDA knocks on the door. Periodic review management requires a strict, enforced schedule.
So someone is actually reading through all of it.
A quality assurance team must actively review these automated logs on a routine basis. And they aren't just reading raw lines of code, right? They are using pattern recognition dashboards to flag anomalies.
Like what kind of anomalies?
They're looking for things like multiple failed login attempts or unusual timestamps, like a data entry at 3 a.m. on a Sunday.
Oh yeah, that's a red flag.
Or an irregular spike in deleted temporary files. The goal is to detect suspicious data modifications and investigate them internally long before an external inspector ever sees them.
So you basically have to act as your own forensic investigator.
Exactly.
But, monitoring human behavior perfectly still leaves you entirely vulnerable if the underlying math is flawed.
Oh, absolutely.
You could be building your high-security vault on top of digital quicksand. And that brings us to our third pitfall, the danger of the familiar. Because even with centralized data and monitored audit trails, disaster strikes when the tools used to analyze the data are fundamentally uncontrolled. And we are talking about a tool that we all use every single day, Excel.
The spreadsheet. It is the undisputed heavyweight champion of the corporate world, but in the highly regulated sphere of pharmaceutical manufacturing, it is a massive, ticking liability.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. We all know the LSCOA principles, right? The idea that data must be attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, and accurate.
Right, the golden rule.
Anyone working near pharma knows this backward and forward.
Yeah.
But what the source material highlights is that companies are trying to enforce LCOA, which was essentially built for the era of paper-using digital tools that were never designed for strict compliance.
Exactly.
FDA inspectors are constantly issuing citations for uncontrolled, unvalidated spreadsheets calculating critical quality attributes. I mean, we're talking about the chemical makeup of drugs going into human bodies being determined by a static file.
It's terrifying, and the reliance on spreadsheets persists because they are undeniably powerful and instantly familiar.
Everyone knows how to use Excel.
Right. Anyone can open a workbook and build a complex tool to solve an immediate lab problem. But that very flexibility is fatal to compliance. A spreadsheet is essentially a blank canvas. It does not inherently enforce rules.
And the most dangerous part of that canvas is the macro. Labs build these incredibly complex spreadsheets packed with custom macros to automate their math.
Yeah, they do.
But a macro is essentially hidden, unauditable code operating behind the scenes. It's a black box. If an accidental keystroke alters a formula in cell D4, the macro still runs.
It doesn't care.
Right. It just silently calculates the wrong number, and the operator completely trusts the output because, well, the computer generated it.
And in an environment where data integrity is paramount, relying on a static, uncontrolled file with hidden background math is just unacceptable. The required fix is a hard transition away from static spreadsheets and toward dynamic, purpose-built digital validation platforms.
So let's break down the mechanics of that. How does a dynamic validation platform physically handle a mathematical error differently than a standard spreadsheet?
Well, the difference is entirely about active intervention. Let's say a technician enters a value and a parameter falls out of an expected range.
Okay.
In a spreadsheet, you just get a weird number sitting passively in a cell. Maybe it turns red if you're lucky.
Right.
But in a dynamic validation system, that anomaly triggers an automated workflow known as deviation management. The system actively locks down. It doesn't just flag the error. It physically prevents the operator from proceeding to the next step of the batch release.
Wow, so it takes the steering wheel completely away from the driver.
It completely overrides human discretion. The system forces the event to be formally captured. It fires an immediate alert to the quality assurance manager's dashboard, and it demands structured actions.
So you can't just ignore it.
Exactly. The deviation must be formally investigated, the root cause identified, and the issue documented and closed by an authorized supervisor before the system will unlock that specific workflow. It physically prevents the error from being swept under the rug or just ignored by a rushing employee.
Okay, so the data is centralized, the audit trails are locked and monitored, and the mathematical tools are dynamic and actively preventing errors. The system is flawless.
Right.
Until a well-meaning IT administrator decides it is time to run a routine software update on a Tuesday night.
The butterfly effect of the digital age. Yes. This is the fourth pitfall, and it catches highly sophisticated companies entirely off guard.
I want to read a direct quote from the source's findings regarding these warning letters, because this is what a pharmaceutical company actually stated to an FDA inspector. Quote, "We updated the software, and we thought it wouldn't affect the lab."
Yeah.
So what does this all mean? A simple mandatory security patch pushed out by an IT department can inadvertently trigger a catastrophic FDA violation.
It happens constantly. In a validated digital environment, every single component is deeply interconnected.
Like a web.
Yeah, updating a piece of software in a pharmaceutical lab is like replacing a single gear in a complex Swiss watch. The new gear you install might be made of stronger titanium. It might be objectively better. But if its teeth are spaced even 1 millimeter differently than the old gear, it will shatter the entire mechanism of the watch the second it starts ticking.
Okay, wait, I have to stop you there and push back on the reality of this.
Sure.
If an IT department has to stop and do a rigorous impact assessment for every single zero-day vulnerability or like a routine security patch, doesn't that completely paralyze the company's cybersecurity response?
It's a valid concern.
Like, how do you balance maintaining strict data integrity with not getting hacked because you were too slow to update?
That is the exact tension that exists right now between a chief information security officer and a quality assurance director. But the solution isn't paralysis. The solution is mapping. Yeah. The fix for this pitfall is a formal change management system. This doesn't mean stopping all updates. It means establishing a centralized, highly structured process where the digital ecosystem is already mapped out in advance.
Oh, I see.
Before any patch or upgrade is deployed, it runs through an impact assessment matrix.
So they already know what the new gear is going to touch before they even put it in the watch.
Exactly. The cross-functional team evaluates the proposed change. They document what systems it interacts with, whether it will alter how a piece of lab equipment sends data to the central server, or, if it changes the way timestamps are formatted in the audit trail.
Right.
Once the risk is assessed and mitigated, the change is approved and documented. Implementing a dedicated change management system proves to the FDA that the company is proactively in control of its digital environment. If you don't have this, the FDA basically assumes your digital environment is arbitrarily controlling you.
It's all about intentionality. Every single digital breath the company takes has to be deliberate and documented.
Yep.
And if we zoom out and synthesize all of this, from eliminating orphan data to enforcing dynamic math and managing IT updates, it completely reframes how we look at those ALCOA principles we mentioned earlier.
You really do.
We all know data needs to be attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, and accurate. But what Omer Simon's article makes crystal clear is that LCOA was designed for a physical reality.
Exactly.
Trying to enforce those principles in a modern, hyper-connected digital lab using the equivalent of digital sticky notes and static spreadsheets is just a broken paradigm.
You cannot rely on human vigilance to enforce digital compliance anymore. You need the proper architectural tools.
Right.
When a company fully adopts a digital validation platform, when they utilize systems that automatically track deviations, mandate change control, and enforce the review of audit logs, they completely flip the script on compliance.
They really do.
They take this massive, terrifying regulatory burden and transform it into an invisible, smooth, standard operating procedure. It simply becomes the path of least resistance for every employee to do the exact right thing.
It builds the culture of integrity directly into the interface itself.
It does. But this raises an important question, and it is a provocative thought I really want to leave you with today.
Oh, let's hear it.
So, throughout this deep dive, we have been exclusively discussing human errors. We are talking about human beings hitting the wrong delete button, humans hiding a formula error in an Excel cell, or an IT administrator pushing a patch without checking the dependencies.
Right. All human actions.
But the source material leaves us with a very subtle hint pointing toward the immediate future. It mentions the rise of Validfor AI and the necessity of contextual AI policy.
Oh, wow. The landscape is about to shift again.
Drastically. If simple human actions are already causing tens of millions of dollars in FDA remediation costs today, think about what happens tomorrow.
Right.
How will these massive pharmaceutical companies maintain this rigorous culture of data integrity when autonomous AI systems start generating, analyzing, and even updating their own data entirely without a human ever touching a keyboard?
Oh, wow. That is, if we are currently struggling to just manage a static spreadsheet, how on earth do we validate an AI that writes its own code on the fly?
Exactly.
That is a massive paradigm shift. It is no longer just about tracking what a human operator did at 3:00 p.m. It is about validating the underlying thought process of an artificial intelligence making a quality control decision.
Yeah.
That is going to completely redefine the very concept of an audit trail.
The stakes are compounding. The digital environment is going to get infinitely more complex, and the regulatory expectations are only going to become more stringent. The companies that survive will be the ones who build their digital foundations right now before the AI wave fully hits.
It really makes you rethink that pristine manufacturing plant we started with. The perfectly humming machines and the sterile floors. Keeping the physical dirt out of the medicine was hard enough, but keeping the digital environment pristine.
That's the real challenge.
That is the absolute frontier. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Whether you are running a pharmaceutical lab, managing a financial database, or just trying to secure your own company's digital infrastructure, I hope this conversation encourages you to look a little closer at the systems you trust every single day.
Absolutely.
Look for those orphan files, enforce those audit trails, and seriously consider retiring that old spreadsheet. We'll see you next time.